Interment will be at Mount Hope Cemetery. The family will be receiving friends for Shiva here at Temple today, Wednesday, November 2nd, from 3 to 6 p.m. If you wish to continue honoring the memory of Michael D. Kravetz, you may do so by making contributions to the Michael and Ruth Kravetz Fund at the JCC, the Jewish Senior Life Foundation, and Temple Bethel. Mizmor leDavid, Adonai roi lo echsar, benodeshe yarvitzeni, al mei menuchot yenahaleni, nafshi yeshovev yancheni, במרגלי צדק למען שמו, גם כי ילך בגיא צל מוות, לא ירא כי אתה עמדי, שבטך משענתך, המה ינחמוני. תערוך לפני שולחן נגד צורריי, דשנת בהשם ראשי כוסי רוויה, אך טוב החסד ירדפוני כל ימי חיי, ושבתי בבית אדוני לאורך ימים. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He has me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He guides me on path of righteousness. He revives my soul for the sake of his glory. Though I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no harm, for you are with me. Your staff and your rod do comfort me. You set a table inside of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of the Lord forever. Death is something individual. Against the collective stream of life, it seems powerless. Flowers fade and die, but every spring repeats them in the cycle of nature. We are a brief episode, but humanity bears the mark of immortality, renewed in every generation by the undying spark of life. As a moment in the never-ending process of life, each of us is immortal, an expression of the persistent thrust of vital energy. In our community, that vital energy was in many occasions represented by Mike, because every birthday was community celebrated in person, by social media. We just couldn't believe he was so vital and so advanced in years. The leaves of last year's summer have died and are vanishing into the treasure of earth. But each one lives on in the renewal of every spring. Every living thing perishes, but life persists. We regard the life of Mike Kravetz as a special link in the chain of vital existence. May we honor him always with a gift of remembrance. Yehi Zichro Baruch. It is now my honor to call upon family members that will speak. We begin with Daniel Braun.
Good morning. Michael Kravetz was my grandfather. For my mom, I'm going to read a quick excerpt from Khalil Gibran, the prophet. If you would indeed behold the spirit of death, open your heart wide unto the body of life. For life and death are one, even as the river and the sea are one. For what is it to die, but to stand naked in the wind and to melt into the sun? And what is it to cease breathing, but to free the breath from its restless tides, that it may rise and expand and seek God unencumbered? Only when you drink from the river of silence shall you indeed sing. And when you have reached the mountaintop, then you shall begin to climb. And when the earth shall claim your limbs, then shall you truly dance. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. It is now my honor to call upon Deborah Kravetz to speak.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for coming to honor my father, my precious father. I was blessed to have him for so long, being just 2 months shy of 104 years old. I gave him a paperweight a few years ago that I found in Skinny Atlas. It had a quote on it by A.A. Milne that read, "If you live to be 100, I want to live to be 100 minus 1 day, so I never have to live a day without you." I was with my dad on Saturday evening and knew he was transitioning very shortly. I brought him dark chocolate, which he ate, and apparently he had his dinner with the other residents in the cottage. I normally turn off my phone at night, but I left it on Saturday. At 5:30 a.m., I received the call from the Jewish home, informing me that he had passed shortly before, and he looked very peaceful. At that point, I was relieved that he did not linger to the point of needing anything to ease pain. He died gracefully the way he lived, a true mensch. He was a quiet, thoughtful man of integrity who loved deeply. I was privileged to have him with me for 15 years at home, from the age of 86 until he was almost 102. During that span of time, we formed a very close bond. I cannot say it was always easy, but my father expressed his love and gratitude daily. One can accomplish almost anything under those circumstances. I enjoyed cooking dinner for him most nights, and we usually ate in time for him to watch his favorite show, Seinfeld. It was a joy listening to him laugh. He also liked Everyone Loves Raymond, 2.5 Men, and of course, Sex and the City. For many years, we loved going to movies and usually out to dinner afterwards. One special summer evening, we drove to Charlotte, and then he wanted to show me the flats where he had lived with his family growing up. He was one of 7 siblings, and they lived in places with 3 bedrooms. The 4 boys in one, 3 girls in the other, and then Grandma and Grandpa. In later years, Uncle Al's good friend Ben came to live with them, and he was our Uncle Ben. We were so fortunate to grow up in a big, loving, extended family with several aunts, uncles, and cousins on both sides of our family. I have countless wonderful memories of my sweet father. I will share one more. When I lived in the Bay Area, he came to visit, and we spent 4 days in Carmel. We went to the beach, we took long scenic walks, we ate in great restaurants, and best of all, had very meaningful conversations. The connection I had with my father is something I will always treasure. He and my mother are in my heart forever. I love you, Daddy, and as he always said, I love you more. And I know I will dance with you again one day. Your memory is a blessing for all who knew you.
Thank you, Deborah. It is now my honor to call upon Howard Kravetz to speak.
From Lao Tzu, the great Chinese philosopher. Life and death are one thread, the same line viewed from different sides. My father was my inspiration, my guiding light, my hero. He led by example, was tough when he needed to be, yet was the kindest, gentlest, most loving and peaceful gentleman that I was blessed to have in my life for so long. When people would ask him what he attributed his longevity to, he would simply gesture, throw it over your shoulder, just let it go. He worked hard and had a successful business career. His number one priority was his family. He was very generous, involved in the community, serving on the boards here at Bethel, the JCC, and the Jewish Home. He loved helping people. In the summer of '69, I worked as a day camp counselor at the Al Siegel Center. I will never forget a black woman asking me if Michael Kravetz was my father, and proceeded to tell me what a wonderful man he was, how he helped her and her family buy a house when no one else would. And I have so many fond memories of special father-son times we shared. When I was a little boy, we used to spend most Saturday afternoons together. We would go to his office in the Times Square building downtown, have lunch, and then go swimming together at the Old Y on Gibb Street. We went on many great ski trips to Vermont when I was a teenager. We always enjoyed each other's company, even when I was going through my rebellious years. He always strove to understand me and what I was going through. Dad was a trailblazer and a very open-minded man. He would reach out to get to know and help my friends, and many of them have been sending me messages of fond memories they had with him. Over the years in my real estate business, I've been told countless times by older colleagues of their positive experiences of doing business with him, that he was a man of impeccable integrity and a pleasure to do business with. Before he went into the Jewish Home almost 2 years ago, we would go out for dinner every Friday night for over 15 years. He loved his fish fries and a glass of Moscato wine. We frequented 3 restaurants regularly, and the staff there got to know and enjoy him as he was always so kind to them. Those were very special times I had with him as he grew older in age and along in years. And one of the most touching and beautiful messages came from our cousin Barbara in Florida. She told me she would be honored if I read it. "We are sorry for the loss of your father. He had it all: kindness, generosity, intelligence, good looks, and of course, the best dancer ever. He was a great man with a huge heart. He was empathic and a man with integrity. He made us all proud. The world was a better place because he was in it. He never complained, always saying he was never better," which he said to me 2 days before he died. He was a loving husband, father, sibling, uncle, and friend, grandfather, great-grandfather, and great-great-grandfather. I love you, Uncle Mike, and will never forget how good you were to me and my family. You will be missed. My family and I thank you all for coming to honor my father today. We are touched by the tremendous outpouring and love and support we are receiving. I want to close with a traditional Hebrew prayer that is chanted on the Sabbath when the Torahs are returned to this ark. I also sang this at our mother's funeral 23 years ago. The English translation is, turn us back, O Lord, to you, and we will turn and we will turn, renew our days as before. Hashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva, Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu, Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. It is now my great honor to call upon my colleague, Rabbi Seymour Rosenblum.
Thank you, Rabbi Petron, for the honor of being able to participate in the service today. And it really is so touching to see Daniel reading from Khalil Gibran's The Prophet, and to hear the beautiful and loving tributes that Deborah and Howard have given. And I know Sue Ellen, though you didn't want to speak in public, all three of them reflect the love that you too have for your dad. I want to begin with a psalm. Psalm 112 is a passage which expresses the virtues of a good man. And as I read through it in this translation by the poet Stephen Mitchell, I think you will hear reverberating through its words the special qualities that were present in Mike Kravetz's life. Happy are those who love life and who cherish what each day brings. Their children will be greatly honored, and their grandchildren truly blessed. An abundance of love will fill their homes as gratitude fills their hearts. They conduct their affairs with justice. Their integrity can never be shaken. They give of themselves to the community and share their wealth with the needy. They're patient, cheerful, compassionate, generous, and impeccably fair. They harbor no regrets for the past and no worries about the future. Their minds are centered on living, and they trust in God with all their hearts. They honor themselves, and they are honored. They walk with heads held high. Their rising is like the sunrise, and their light fills heaven and earth. Their caring deeds shine upon all people. Their goodness will endure forever. So it is my pleasure to speak on behalf of Mike today. And whenever I'm participating in a family event in the Kravetz family, the question always comes up, well, how are you related? And it's actually a little bit convoluted. The truth is that my mother, Ruth, who was known as Rachel, and Mike's wife, Ruth, who was known as Rishi, were second cousins, which makes me a second cousin, once removed by marriage, to Mike. Now, when you write that out and listen to it, it sounds, like we're like miles apart. But the truth is, the relationship of our family with the Kravetz family has been much, much closer than one would get from the table of relationships and from the way it looks on paper. And I remember particularly when my father had a massive stroke in 1968 and lingered for 4 days in the hospital before he died. I know my sister Helen, who's here today, and I will never forget that it was Mike and Ruth who didn't want us to be alone and said, "Come be with us. We'll take care of you during this difficult period." So we went to their home. We stayed there for days. Mike drove us to the hospital when the call came in on a Sunday morning that our father had taken a severe turn for the worse. Mike went to Parsky's with me to make the arrangements for my father's funeral. And he drove us to the service in the Temple Bethel Chapel and at the cemetery in his own car so we wouldn't have to hire a limousine. We lit Hanukkah candles with Mike and Ruth in their home on the eve of my father's funeral because it was the first night of Hanukkah, and the first Seder after my father died was in the Kravetz home. So I owe Mike, Helen owes Mike, my mother owed Mike a deep debt of gratitude for the love that he and Ruth showed us during that most difficult time in our life. But that's just the entry point into why I'm here today. It's not just because of our relationships, but it is because of the unique quality of Mike Kravetz's life. It was a life of grace. It was a life of graciousness. It was a life of kindness. It was a life of caring. And it was a life that he and Ruth really built together in a remarkable and unusual way. They were truly a remarkable couple. They met in 1945 at a Halloween dance at the JY downtown. Some of us still remember that old building. And then in the days it wasn't the Jewish community centers, it was the Jewish Young Men's and Women's Association. They had a whirlwind romance. Now some of us are old enough to remember that you could get up to the Cobbs Hill Park Reservoir, and there was a kind of lover's lane up there. Now it's blocked off. You can't go up there anymore. I wanted to show it to my kids a few years ago, and it was blocked. We couldn't drive up there. So Mike and Ruth were up there. I don't know what they were doing. But Mike turned to Ruth and said, "What would you say if I told you I loved you?" And she said back, without giving it a moment's thought, "I'd say, let's get married." So in March of 1946, they were married. They were such a glamorous couple. Bride and groom, movie star quality when you look at the wedding pictures. They got married at the Old Temple Bethel on Park Avenue and Meg Street. And it's ironic that the last event at that synagogue was Sue Ellen's bat mitzvah. During the night, there was a fire which destroyed the building. Mike and Ruth were always on a spiritual journey. Daniel's passage from Gibran that he read a little while ago, one of the passages said, "Open your heart wide to the body of life." Open your heart wide to the body of life. That's what Mike and Ruth did. They opened their hearts wide to the body of life. They were always on a spiritual journey. They were curious about everything. They were open to new ideas. They went on elder hostels. They discovered yoga before it was fashionable. They traveled the country in an RV. And they were ready to adapt when presented with new situations that challenges their expectations. Most of all, they had unconditional love for their three children, Sue Ellen, Deborah, and Howard. Not that each of you didn't challenge them, each in your own way. But they learned from you. They learned as they tried to figure you out. They saw you as individuals. They valued you for who you were. And your dad loved you because you were you. When he didn't get you, he didn't give up on you. He grew because he worked to understand you. He believed in you. He always had your back. He was your rock, your champion, your role model, your hero. Mike was blessed with a beautiful soul. He was gentle, patient, kind, sweet, and strong. Most of all, he was your father, in the best sense of the word. And Deborah, your remarks were so touching. These last 15 years, you gave your dad an incredible gift, to be there with him, to live together with him, to laugh with him, to watch TV with him, to go to the movies with him, to cook for him. You gave him the ability to live in his own home, for almost the last year of his life. It was a consummate gift that let him live with security, dignity, and love. And to have him say to you every day, when you say to him every day, I love you, and for him to answer back, I love you more, was a precious and wonderful experience. I know that Sue Ellen and Howard will always be grateful beyond words for the care that you gave to your father. He was blessed to see a remarkable family, to see it grow to grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-great-grandchildren. Sue Ellen and Odessa, blessed memory, gave him his grandson Daniel, and then great-grandchildren to Dominic, Daniel, and Israel, and great-great-grandchildren, Alon, Lennox, and London. Howard and Joy blessed him with Adam, Michaela, Nathan, and a great-grandson, Micah, the true gift of his old age. What an awesome host of a family. And we also want to remember Annette Waldman. They had after Ruth passed away, they had good years together. They rekindled a relationship from their teenage years, having found each other, now newly widowed, and they got together and had a wonderful life together. So much so that on Mike's night table, he had a picture both of Ruth and Annette, and cherished the memory of both of them. We remember his parents, Rose and Hyman, of blessed memory. As Howard said, he was one of 7 children: Jack, Millie, Al, Fanny, Fred, and Lena. All but 2 of them lived into their 90s. He was the only one who made it to 100. And we also remember your Uncle Ben, who was adopted by the family and lived with them as a brother. He had a successful business career that began with a small grocery store, transitioned into real estate with First Realty, and then into investing and finance. And as Howard described, his career was always identified by integrity, kindness, and Menschlichkeit. I know Howard was always proud when someone would ask, "Are you Mike Kravetz's son?" And you would be able to say yes. It was a true compliment in the business. He was active in the community, serving on the boards of Temple Bethel, the Jewish Home, and the Jewish Community Center. Rabbi Bertrand began by commenting that every birthday Mike celebrated was a community celebration. And I remember his 100th birthday party almost 4 years ago, January 13th, 2019, on his birthday. It was really an incredible celebration. And as part of that celebration, I made a comment. Now, just to go back for a second, Cindy and I were driving up from Philadelphia yesterday, and her son Josh texted and said, 104. What was the secret of his longevity? So Cindy said, "What would you say?" I said, "It was his great head of hair." And I commented about his hair at the party in 2019 because, I was looking right at him, and I mean that shock of hair was really it was like a crown that he wore, and it was just an amazing thing. I said, "If it was only for your hair, Mike, you would have had a great life." But of course, there was so much more. In any case, so the TV channel, I think it was WHAM, picked up a segment, and they put it out on a segment they call Bright Spot. And they talked about how this event was a great celebration of a colossal life, that Brighton had proclaimed the day Michael Kravetz Day, and the reporter ended with the words, "And that's Mike Kravetz, inspiring us all with a century of life and a full head of hair." So, a century of life and a full head of hair, it doesn't get much better than that. Well, when someone lives as long as Mike did, who when asked how you are would always answer, never better, you get lulled into thinking that they're going to be here forever, and they're going to be strong forever, and they're going to be our leaders and our heroes forever. But the toll of time is inevitable, and I know it was heartbreaking to see him struggling and to begin to lose the vitality that he once had and to see his spirit ebbing before you. He reached a point where he was ready and you were ready. There is profound sadness when a parent passes away, when anyone we love passes away. The finality of death is heartbreaking. It just sears our soul to know that we will never see them again in this life. But it also gives a measure of peace, because we know that at the end he was beginning to suffer, and he had lost so much of that vitality that made him who he was. And now that he is at peace, what we really feel is gratitude and celebration for an incredible life of almost 104 years. He died with the grace by which he lived, peacefully in his sleep. The rabbis teach us that when someone passes away this way, it is as if they die al pi Adonai, as if they died at the mouth of God, that God extracts their soul from them with a kiss, and their passing is peaceful, without pain, and fulfilling the promise of their life. So as the psalmist said in the words with which I began, we know that Mike Kravetz's goodness has not been lost. It lives on in all of our hearts. It lives on in the people whom he touched. It lives on in his grandchildren, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and great-great-grandchildren. It ripples from generation to generation, well into the future. His good works will endure forever, and he will be a shining light to all who remember and love him, and to all those whose lives were influenced and blessed because of his. Tehi nishmato tzurah rabbi tzuror hachayim. May his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. And let us say, Amen. I'm going to continue now with the El Malei Rachamim, the traditional memorial prayer. If you are comfortable standing, it is traditional to rise for the El Malei Rachamim. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen B'Meromim, Hametzeh Menocha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei HaShechina, B'Mahalot Kedoshim U'Tehorim, Kezohar Harakia Mazhirim, Et Nishmat Meir David Ben Chaim V'Shoshana, Shalach Le'olamo, Began Eden Tehei Menuchato, Anna Ba'al HaRachamim, Hastireu B'Seter Knafecha, Le'olamim, Utzeror B'Tzeror HaChayim Et Nishmato, Adonai Hu Nachalato, V'yanuach B'Shalom, al mishkavo v'nomar Amen.
O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure. To the soul of Michael D. Kravetz, Meir David ben Chaim Shoshana, who has gone to his eternal home. Master of mercy, we beseech you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that he performed in the land of the living. May his soul be bound up in the bonds of life. Of the Lord is his portion. May he now rest in peace. And let us say all together,
Amen.
Tzedek lefanav